I'm putting my money on Cooper Kupp ending up in Pittsburgh. I am. It just makes too much sense. They weren't going to trade for him. You know, we've talked about his trade price the entire offseason, and they just weren't. It wasn't going to happen. You know, they weren't going to walk in there, or anybody was going to walk in there and say, "Hey, you guys want a 5th round pick for a guy that you just made very aware that you're trying to trade to save cap space. And if you cut him on the first day of the league year, you save that cap space anyways. So chances are you're just going to release him." That wasn't happening. Nobody's trading for Cooper Kupp. The wide receiver market was good enough to ignore that situation. He's not Deebo Samuel, so you're not getting a 28-year-old who still has a bunch of juice left in the tank, maybe, and is worth taking a shot on. Cooper Kupp's a 32-year-old wide receiver who misses games most seasons and who's still phenomenal, but you don't know if he's even able to play a full season with 17 games, most likely becoming 18 at some point in the next 2-3 years. I look Cooper Kupp as an easy choice for the Steelers. And I would bet you Pittsburgh is maybe 2 or 3 on their list. I'm guessing Green Bay is pretty high. Excuse me. They want they want a wide receiver really bad, and they're probably willing to pay Cooper Kupp a little bit of money. But the Steelers probably also want Cooper Kupp, and they probably want Cooper Kupp really bad. And they're very much so okay. And they're okay with that slowing down Roman Wilson. They're okay with that opening the door for George Pickens. They are okay with what Cooper Kupp brings. And I don't know. This is a wild scenario that we've somehow ended up here with. But if the Steelers offense is, and there are going to be a lot of people that laugh as I say this, if the Steelers offense is Aaron Rodgers, Jaylen Warren, Cooper Kupp, DK Metcalf, Calvin Austin, and Pat Freiermuth, did they get better than last year? Did that happen somehow?
Yeah. I mean, if that's your entire offensive weaponry, you are better. I'm not going to say how much better. There's still a lot of questions, but you're better. I mean, and the one way to shine up the turd that is the Pittsburgh Steelers quarterback situation is to surround him with as much talent as humanly possible. You already got DK Metcalf. If you bring in somebody else who, like you mentioned, he might only play 12 games, but in those 12 games, he's going to give you some really good production in Cooper Kupp. If you're bringing those types of guys in, you're going to give whatever quarterback it is, whether that's Aaron Rodgers, whether it's one of these rookies, whether it's, Mason Rudolph, God forbid, you're going to give them the best shot to succeed. And I think matched with the fact that I expect the Steelers offensive line to be much improved in year 2 of this group as a whole, okay, I think that you're looking at this and you're saying, yeah, why wouldn't you look to bring in Cooper Kupp? I'm somebody that likes Roman Wilson, that thinks he's going to be good for the Steelers. I'm somebody that likes Calvin Austin and thinks he's going to be good for the Steelers. But the bar gets raised if you bring in Cooper Kupp. It's the same way that, hey, if you brought in DK and eventually got rid of George Pickens, are you that much better? No, you're not a bunch better, but the bar has been raised a little bit. And I think that the same thing occurs if you bring in Cooper Kupp. So I think that certainly would help the Pittsburgh Steelers, not to mention the fact that, listen, Cooper Kupp's not strictly on the inside. You look at what he did last year. He played 37% of his snaps on the outside last year. So this misconception of, well, he's short, so he can't play outside, it doesn't match up. Calvin Austin is short, but he was also primarily an outside receiver in college. Yes. So these guys do have that little bit of versatility. And I think Cooper Kupp, if you bring him in, it's simply to sit there and say, listen, our quarterback situation is not as good as we'd like it to be. So we're going to give him as much talent as humanly possible to work with. And if that means bringing in Cooper Kupp, then it means bringing in Cooper Kupp.
Yeah. I agree. Just load up on it. You know what I mean? Just load up on it and give yourself options. That's what the Steelers should be doing, because that's what they need right now. They need options. They don't have the options. Last season they had no options, which, look, at no disrespect to Van Jefferson, okay? But did you see the Jordan Schultz tweet about when he got signed?
I did not.
Saying that, like, he's the solution to Tennessee's receiving problem. Yeah, tough times. Tough times to be a Titans fan, for sure. I agree. That's what you need is options. You just need to load yourself up with as many offensive weapons as you possibly can to go into the second phase of the offseason, which is the NFL draft, and say, where do we go? How do we change? What do we need to change? And if this was a straightforward, there were no changes to be made offseason, you don't do that. But the Steelers need to have options. They need to be able to go into the draft and say, if we don't draft a wide receiver, that's okay. We've done just fine. They need to go into the NFL draft and say, if we get a first-round pick for George Pickens, we can make that move. That's okay. We're loaded up enough. We're good to go. And we don't have to spend that on a wide receiver. We could go do something else, like draft a quarterback in the first round, because people are going to overlook that possibility. But George Pickens for a late round first pick, you just open the door to go draft Jackson Dart. Like that's a scenario the Steelers would like to present themselves with. It's across the board. You know what I mean? The Steelers, Roman Wilson doesn't work out in year 2. You have options. Anybody gets hurt at any point, you got options. That's what the Steelers need to do this offseason. That's what Cooper Kupp does.